ethics and ethical decision-making for mentors is like having the base foundations for a house that you're building, or the soil in the seed bed of the garden that you're going to be growing some plants. And I wanted to use that analogy to start off with, to emphasize how important ethics and ethical decision-making is for mentors and for mentees. And we're going to be covering that off in today's All Things Mentoring Lounge. And Doug and I are going to have a conversation about the 7 ethical values and compare those with ethically neutral values, and share some stories from our own practice, and also give you the first 5 important steps to ethical decision-making, because we will be providing a workbook, ebook kind of PDF that you'll be able to download from the international mentoring community. So this is All Things Mentoring Lounge, and welcome, Doug. Good to see you again. And with that brief introduction, maybe you give a brief introduction to who you are and what role you have in IMC.
I'm Doug Lawrence, and I am the co-founder of the International Mentoring Community. I'm also, I have the pleasure of occupying the role as the Director of Education and Outreach.
And Stephen Hobbs here, and I am the Director of Certification, and obviously the other co-founder, and we're bringing the International Mentoring Community to you through whatever means are available, including the All Things Mentoring Lounge that goes on the first and third Wednesday at 10 a.m. Mountain. So hopefully you will join us. And even if you have a question, let us know, and we can bring it to the surface here at the lounge. So Doug, we had decided we're going to take a look at this thing called ethics, ethical values and ethical decision-making. So it will be certainly a topic that will bring some interest to many people, but it also brings interest because it is one of the core competencies associated with acquiring your certificate of competence mentor. And it's also, as we talk about competencies, it's also, it becomes an action outcome, is to define ethics, to demonstrate the use of ethical decision-making. So I think it's worth us jumping in. What do you think?
I think so, yes.
Okay, so let's just take a look at this thing called ethics. And one of the ways in which I would share with you is the difference between ethics and morals. And I think of morals, your beliefs and the behaviors that go with that, up to your skin. And ethics is the beliefs that you share with others. So it's very much from your skin out. And therefore, ethics is a way in which to understand your behavior with others and the behavior of others with you. So I'm looking at it from that perspective, and therefore it really plays itself out in this mentoring mentee arrangement that we're talking about. Is there anything you want to add to the definition or your own thoughts around ethics from your perspective, Doug?
From my perspective, I think that once we get started going through the 7 different ethics statements, that it's going to become clearer to our listening audience what we're talking about.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes all of a sudden dropping in ethics, hang on a minute. It has some confusion sometimes around this word ethics. And I think if we unpack it, like you said, unfold it, I think that would be very helpful. But I think just before we go into the 7, I think what would be really helpful here as well is to understand what is an ethically neutral value. So ethically neutral values are things like aesthetics and wealth. And I use those two just simply because I think we all know about them, we talk about them. And why they're neutral is that there's many different interpretations of what is wealth and what is aesthetics. Whereas when we get into the ethical values, and I think as Doug alluded to here, and we unfold them for you, there's not a lot of wiggle room. Is you get to understand them and go, yeah, okay, this is something that we share. So the 7 of those are, and then we'll come back and we'll take a look at them. There's accountability, caring, community, fairness, respect, trustworthiness, and we're going to add hospitality to that. So let's start off with the first one. I think we would generally agree that if you are taking up accountability for something, it means that you are going to account for what happens. And therefore, as a mentor, you have accountability for the mentoring structure, arrangement, and the relationship, certainly to start with the mentee. And therefore, you're responsible to do certain things in that accountability for. I sort of liken it to like there's an umbrella, and if you had all the different spines that frame the umbrella, those are all the responsibility things you got to do. So I always remember when I explain accountability and this responsibility is I'm carrying around an umbrella so that I can protect myself in terms of what's going on and know what I need to remember and things that I need to do. Thoughts on that? Accountability?
I think with accountability, and I'm reminded of a number of mentoring relationships that I have on the go today, that if I need to sort of be mindful of whereabouts we are in the relationship from an accountability perspective. And the reason for that is that if I kind of cross the line, cross over, and start to make more decisions and all of those things, I assume accountability for what the outcome is going to be. And I take away that critical thinking, that decision-making capability. I have now assumed that, and I take that away from the mentee. And I know from a practice perspective, I try to avoid that. I want them to be accountable.
Yeah, and we have to develop that over time. When we first start off, there's a little bit more leaning towards the mentor, and then it becomes a two-way trusted relationship. Another word that I would add into this accountability responsibility component is answerability. Is that because you are answering as a mentor, you're answering the questions of the mentee. Answerability, the ability to answer, sort of falls underneath this umbrella. Okay, it's sort of not, if you picture, it's not outside of the umbrella, it's sort of underneath this umbrella, because you have to know is, do I answer it? Or maybe I have to say, hey, listen, maybe both have to go find an answer, or hey, I just need to go check something out first before I do answer it. So the ability to answer, I think, is another element that I wanted to weave in here as well. So let's jump into the next one, which is caring. Now, this is one that I believe we really need to bring to the foreground in today's world. There's lots of things where I would say caring has sort of gone down and away from our relationships, and to be able to find this kindness and to bring kindness back into our interactions with one another, to understand the compassion and empathy, right? The empathy to feel and to know what's going on, but the compassion to decide if I help or not. And I think from a mentor to mentee relationship, and to help the mentee, is to bring this caring and kindness interaction into the relationship is really important. And I know for you, Doug, is that because you work in a lot of mental health situations now, is that sometimes you almost got to heighten your awareness of that as a mentor when you're working in, when you're walking in, working with that, just like in some workplaces today. I think we really need to pay attention to that. Any thoughts you want to add to that, or even give us a wonderful example of it at play?
Well, I know that you've touched on obviously something that's very near and dear to my heart, but it's also something that when we take a look at the support structure for mental health today, in a lot of cases, there's a shortfall in the caring part. So we have, people are, I call it, we have somebody who is dealing with mental health challenges, and for the most part, they've sequestered themselves in this closet because of the stigmatism that's normally attached to somebody with mental health, that people view them as, maybe not being all there, being a bit on the crazy side and all of that. And what we need to do, instead of looking at it through that lens, is we need to look at it from the aspect of what can I do to help that person move along on their healing journey? And how can I demonstrate caring? Can I be that person that when they open the closet door and reach out, I'm there to take them by the hand and say, together, we're going to go on this journey. We're going to work together to be able to do that. And through all of that, to be demonstrating to that person a level of kindness that's going to get them to, or help them better understand that we as mentors are there to help and to guide.
And with mentoring in the workplace in today's world, is with this flux between, is it a Zoom organization of the work? Is it in the office again, or is it a combination? Is really to pay attention to this caring and kindness aspect of what's unfolding. I think also is that one of the things I bring to the surface quite often is the notion of careless and careful around the banner of caring. Careful is when you take care of others at your expense. Careless is take care of yourself at the expense of others. And to really be alert to that and finding that caring, kindness, compassion, empathy storyline is really important as a mentor. And I think we are sharing it here is the mentee understanding that as well, and the ways in which they bring who they are, their behaviors into the arrangement and relationship as well. Let's jump into community. And community often has the connection to citizenship and philanthropy. And with mentoring around the community is, while there's two of you, there is a sense of the beginning of community, but what we tend to forget about a lot of times is the ripple effect of that arrangement, that connection that you have, and the mentoring that takes place does influence others because of what gets shared, what gets done because of that mentoring. And I think us understanding it from a community point of view, broadening out the impact of this is very helpful. But also, community also brings forward this notion of citizenship. And I'm going to liken it is that, and Doug mentioned it earlier, to a trusted relationship, right? Is citizenship, the notion of both being involved, both contributing, is really important for the mentoring arrangement and relationship to move forward. And I'm going to come back to philanthropy and link that to mentoring in a second. But again, thoughts from your perspective, Doug?
Well, and I typically look at it from, when I hear the word community, I think of it from the aspect of family, community, organization, country. So I think of it, when we as mentors start to try to make the world a better place to live, it includes all of those elements, which are all part of the community. And I think that the other thing that I've noticed lately is that there seems to be a lot of emphasis on that word community in a number of different places, not only just mentoring, but in a number of other places where people talk about, we need to form a community that's going to do this, or we need to form a community that's going to provide, I look at it, we talk about the mental health community as an example, is that, we turn to the mental health community for solutions to be able to put into place that's going to help people deal with that sort of thing. So I think community is a broader perspective than what we typically look at it for.
Yes. And if I weave in the philanthropy, because we often think of philanthropy and community as about giving money, and I would just like to broaden that use of that word as well, as because philanthropy can also be around your use of your effort and the use of your time. And the sense sometimes when you're doing mentoring, there is some philanthropy, is because I may not be getting paid for this, yet I may be putting in a fair bit of effort. So it's really understanding this combination of community, citizenship, philanthropy, the words that frame up the value that you share with one another about what I now call legacy. And one of my elements is legacy and how you might mentor as a form of your legacy. So again, weaving this all together. So why don't we jump into fairness, and often justice gets linked up with this as well. When we're in our mentoring, mentee combination, it's being fair to one another and showing justice towards each other in the sense of the integrity that you bring to what's going on. And being fair and, well, this is who I am, this is who you are. Let's bring that fairness of us as being fully human, being natural, and bringing that into the connection. But at the same time, being just in how we look at it, like words like judgment, how we can quickly go to judgment. And the integrity factor is, don't go there so quick. Don't react to the conversations that you're having and lose this fairness and justice perspective. So that's where I'd like to share, the connection with mentoring. Anything you want to add to it?
The one thing that sort of jumped, and you've kind of touched on it, but is the whole aspect of bias. And so being, checking my bias at the door, wanting to be able to create a mentoring environment that is based on fairness, so that when we get together, I have no preconceived notions of what the outcome's going to be. And that I know that together, if we put, our heads together, we're going to be able to navigate through this relationship together, and we're going to exercise fairness, and not only fairness for me as an individual, but fairness from the aspect of the relationship as a whole.
And I would add to that, then, being wholehearted is that the integrity of being wholehearted is sometimes we go into thinking about it. What about the feeling aspect that's going on? And the feelings are going to pop up in a mentoring arrangement and relationship. And to be able to deal with them fairly and in a just way is going to be really important as well. So let's take a look at respect. And over the years, in my own mentoring and the mentors that I have worked with, whenever I found that things sort of went out of whack, I thought it was about fairness and justice all the time. And then I started to pick up on this word respect. And that's why I bring it to the surface, and I really bring it to the surface, is the respect we have for one another and the courtesy that we interact with each other. And we've talked about this in other videos, is if you're showing up late to your mentoring arrangement, there's a courtesy factor there, and that sort of undermines the respect. And it goes both ways. All right. I know that there's some mentors go, oh, well, if I'm a few minutes late, it doesn't matter, but my mentee better be there. and I just go, I think we need to revisit that statement, okay? Because really you are appreciating and celebrating each other when you are demonstrating this ethic of respect. Thoughts?
And it actually takes us back to the word caring and how important. So if I'm not respectful of you as an individual, whether you're the mentor or the mentee, what message is it that I'm sending? And it's that it's all about me. It's not about you. And in actual fact, it's completely the reverse, is that I always go into it with the idea in mind of I need to be respectful of you as an individual, and I need to determine what we can do together to help you realize the outcomes that you're looking for. And by doing it that way versus sort of saying, oh gosh, like you were saying earlier, if I'm 10 minutes late, who really cares? It's even, I have now gotten into the habit after all these years of suggesting to my mentee that let's exchange cell phone numbers so that if one of us is going to be a few minutes late, as a courtesy, we can text and say, I'm running a bit behind. I got caught behind a train or, that may sound humorous, but here in Regina where I am, that happens a lot. And so it's a matter of being able to, send a quick message to say, I'm sitting here at the train tracks waiting for the train to go through, and then I'll be on my way.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And again, I think just really emphasizing that appreciating one another.
Yeah.
And because there is joy in that appreciation. And when you enjoy being together, it really strengthens, improves, and focuses that mentoring relationship as well. And that's why for me, I'll admit it, respect is one of the ones where if that one is eroded or chipped away, I will bring that back to the surface really quickly and say, I think we need to take a look at this. And that's just come over the years of being a mentor and being a mentee as well. So I just, to personalize this one, that's important. Well, the next one we want to take a look at is this notion of trustworthiness, the trust aspect of interacting, and the trust that I have the competence to do what I need to do. I have the trust that I will show up and add who I am to this. I won't take away from it. I will find ways to improve focus and strength. And there's trust that I'll show up and do it in an honest way, with honesty. Okay. I've heard of different mentors who, when they're engaged, are going, I'm questioning the honesty of my mentees. Right? They're not telling me the whole truth. They may need to be hiding something behind. And again, it's not that you have to dig in unless you know that there's something that's missing there and you may want to question it. But when I hear a mentee come to me and say, well, my mentor has not been honest with me about anything that's going on, I have to really sit back and say, okay, how can I help this mentee? Because that's not a fair way of doing things. It's not a respectful way of doing things. It's not a caring way of doing things. To your point earlier about, we can weave all of these together into any kind of connection, any kind of structure. I think most of us are starting to figure that out as we weave through these. But what would you like to add to this this notion of trustworthiness?
Just the aspect, and what kind of flashed to my mind was when I'm job coaching as part of the mentoring relationship, and somebody, your mentee has applied on a position and it's a stretch for them. And so I have developed a process to get them to go through on their own, not me doing it for them, but them to go through there. And they know that when I put that process in front of them, that it, you know, that there's an element on their part of being trusting of what it is that I'm trying to get them to sort of see. And part of it is that if they're my mentee, I don't want to see them set themselves up for failure. So if it's a stretch, I'm probably going to, through the process that I've created, be able to demonstrate to them that this may not turn out as well as you would like it to. And so you need to decide whether you want to go ahead. So, and they know after a period of time, they know that when I make those statements, they can rely on or trust what it is that I'm suggesting to them or the guidance that I'm giving.
Oh, for sure. And I think in there is that notion of truth, trust, and transparency. And other videos that we've made, we bring that phrase up, and I think it's really important here. And so that's the first 6, and we mentioned there's 7. Now, these first 6, for years and years, are ones that I really knew about and I shared. And then I started figuring out what were the ethically neutral values, okay? But there's one that has certainly come to the surface over the last number of years for me, and that's the, I'm going to call it the value, the ethical value of hospitality. And hospitality in the sense of welcoming those who've not arrived yet. It's a little different than a lot of people might think about how I might define it. It's welcoming those who've not arrived yet. In other words, to be prepared to be in support of those who are going to arrive to what's happening. So in this mentor-mentee arrangement relationship is to be alert to, all right, welcoming that mentee into this two-way trusted relationship, but yet the mentee may not know all of what it involves. And if it's your first time, or even if it's your second, third, or fourth time, you're coming into something that's new. And how do you as a mentor show this hospitality, right? This welcoming approach, this helpfulness to the mentee. I think we really have to start paying attention to that, considering a lot of what's going on in the world. And we alluded to it, you know, the mental health aspects, even what's going on in the workplace, things happening at home, like to understand the hospitality aspect of mentoring is important. Thoughts from your side?
Well, the big thing for me that jumps out from that is just the aspect of being prepared and being present. So those are, you know, those two things I think of from the hospitality perspective, that if I'm not prepared, I'm not going to be, you know, demonstrating accountability or caring. You know, it's all linked together. And if one link of the chain is missing or is broken, then it's going to create, from an ethical perspective, it's going to create more challenges for us to have to deal with as a mentor in order to be able to help the mentee to be able to move forward.
Yeah. Well, you brought up an interesting word, prepared, and I think back to my wilderness remote first aid days, right? Is a prevention mindset and a preparation approach. That's hospitality in a sense, especially if you're going out with a couple of other people. Is, am I prepared? Do I have my prevention? What's going on, right? Because you're welcoming people into that group and you may not know them, right? With the mentor-mentee relationship and arrangement, sometimes you don't know a lot about the person at the very beginning. So to be able to come at it from this hospitality perspective, I think is a value add, right? An ethical value add. At the very beginning, I mentioned that we're going to take a look at ethical decision-making. And what I wanted to do is to share first few steps of ethical decision-making. I believe there's 10, And they're going to be in a ethical decision-making PDF small ebook that we're going to prepare on behalf of IMC, so that accompanies this video, shows up in the library, it's available to you, and it will elaborate on all 10. But I just wanted to give an idea of sort of like the first 4 to 5, all right, because what I'm going to explain, one of them sort of has a couple of the parts to it. So this will get you going. I believe this will be of great value when you're listening to this lounge episode. So to start off with, we find ourselves in situations. Now, the situation could be we're going to start this mentor-mentee, or the mentee may be bringing a situation to ask them questions about. So there is this thing of situations we find ourselves in. And often there's a certain boundedness of that situation. It's in the workplace, it's in my life, maybe it's in one of my sports teams. There's some bounding that takes place. So when I do the ethical decision making, I know that ethics is going to play itself out here. One of the things I do is I ask the mentee, and I'm going to use the mentor-mentee connection here at this point. I will just say to the mentee, just walk me through what's going on in the situation that you want to ask this question about. Just share with me, review the situation so I can get it in your words at this point in time. And I'm just wanting to listen. Just let the person share what they need to share, all right? And knowing that we're going to take a look at that situation, and we might ask some questions back and forth for points of clarification. But if I know as a mentor it's coming from an ethical point of view, or the mentee might even mention that as well, then what we need to do is consider which of the 7 ethics, use them now as a lens to look at that situation. Now, the interesting thing is, and Doug was sharing it as we were going along, you can make a case for all 7 in just about any situation. But what I'm sharing here is one of them is probably, maybe 2, but usually one is blinking like a neon sign in the late night supermarket, on the front said, we're open, we're open. No, this is the ethic we're going to look at. It's blinking at you. Because what happens is that if you use that as your step 2, that lens to look at it, then you can go into step 3, which is, let's look at the situation now through the lens of that ethical value. And what usually takes place is that the emotion elements, usually of the story, the first story, by the third step and looking at it with the reframing, the emotions tend to, just lessen off, and you're now using the ethics word, and therefore you start to get into the place of sharing between, not just sharing the story from within. You're now sharing it between. So as a mentor-mentee, you can really start to, oh, okay, this is what I'm understanding. Now together, all right, we can figure out what's happening. Now, what's important here, all right, in this step is to ask the mentee to reflect on that story, that ethical lens story, in relationship to just tell me what the situation's about, and see what they pick up as well. And this is a really great time for the person to understand is, yes, there's the one ethical value, but hang on a minute, there's actually this ethical value and this ethical value, and they can start to see the full ethics of what this situation is about. And then obviously it's to figure out what you do next. That's sort of like the next step of this, is because, yeah, it's great to understand it, but now what are you going to do? What actions? And of course, one of those actions could be do nothing. Maybe just the awareness of it, understanding it, is enough at this point in time. But usually there's something else that goes with it. So just in summary is, have the person share the story, review the situation as it is. Second, look at which of the ethical lenses applies to it. One's blinking at you. Then reframe the story, look at it, the situation through that ethical lens. The next one is do a little reflection on that story using that ethical storyline to see what else is there, and then obviously figure out where you're going to move on to. And again, this will be detailed more in this ebook that will be available. Anything you want to, from a deep practice point of view, is there anything there you want to pick up on in terms of this, the beginnings of the ethical decision-making approach?
Well, I think part of it is certainly what I've found from the practice is that I need to listen and hear what's going on. And it's not only listen and hear what the mentee is saying, but also listen and hear what's going on inside of me as I hear their story.
Yeah, and sometimes when you ask them which is the ethical value that they see, it can be a bit of a reaction because it may not necessarily be the one that's blinking. Now, the question becomes, is that based on the story where you are with that person, do you do a little bit of a question and answer around the selection of the ethic, or do you let it happen and then through the sharing is maybe, could it be this other ethic, right, is there first, and to look at it from that perspective. That's why it's so dynamic and interesting when it starts to unfold in this way. So yeah, so I'm hoping, folks, is that, you know, attending here the All Things Mentoring Lounge is that you pick up some insights about ethics, ethically neutral values, and the beginnings of the ethical decision-making process that's in support of you as a mentor. And if you're listening through the ears of a mentee, it's of value to you as well, because a mentee often becomes a mentor. If only in that relationship you have with the mentor that you're working with. But often you enter into a mentor-mentee relationship that's could be your second, your third connection. So anything you want to add, or certainly what would you like to share maybe as our outgoing thought from this video, from this lounge event?
I think that the big thing for mentors, and for that matter mentees, is just to understand the ethical decision-making process and the ethical values that we've talked about today. Because as we unpack them, we're hoping that what it did for everyone that's listening in today is it gave them that deeper, richer appreciation of how important ethics is to a mentoring relationship.
And then to be able to demonstrate them as a mentor. That's why in our certificate of competence, it's about manage, demonstrate these ethics, not, oh yeah, I understand about it, but I'm not going to do anything with it. No, you actually got to demonstrate it and put it into action as well. So thanks again, everyone, for joining Doug and I here at the All Things Mentoring Lounge. Again, first and third Wednesday at 10 a.m. Mountain is when we do the show. We're going to be moving it towards a live here soon, if not next week, next time, sorry, not next week, but the next time we get together, again, first and third Wednesday, 10 a.m. And if you have a topic that you'd like us to take a look at, or even if you'd like to join, just set up some words, some comments in the comments section, or get a hold of us through the contact page on the website and let us know. We would so enjoy having you join us in the lounge. So Doug, always great to share some time with you, and I look forward to our next connection. Doug, take care. Thank you.
Take care.